Hi guys, today we'll be showcasing you guys how to how to set up this scene in Blender, where we will be showcasing you the basic Blender navigation, how to move objects around, rotate them, scale them, etc. Do some basic settings so that you guys can efficiently use Blender, and also how to go about setting up Grease Pencil in that 3D environment to shoot these amazing dynamic shots with camera movements, and how you would be setting them up as efficiently as possible. Let's get going. So first thing we want to do is set up the scene so that that we have this. But before we go and do anything else, let's just delete everything in the scene, and we want to have that default cube back in. So we want to Shift A, which gives us the quick hotbar of being able to add new meshes, curves, whatever, but we want to just cube. And for people that are just getting into Blender, to navigate into Blender, you hold middle mouse compared to holding Alt in Maya. So hold Alt and left click. Holding middle mouse allows you to orbit around the guy. If you hold Shift whilst middle mousing, it pans around. Control allows you to dolly in, zoom in, instead of you can also scroll up and down, but this is also dependent on your mouse wheel clicks. And if you hold Alt, you go into orthographic view in Blender. A few settings to take note of under pressing edit preferences. You want your input, your key map, so that your spacebar is search. Having spacebar as your play is a little bit annoying later on, because the search function is hard to get into without having it on spacebar, and there's multiple hotkeys to press play on spacebar, so your playback is not lost. You want to have tab for pie menu or pie menu on drag. This allows you to press tab and go into all the different modes, which will be really important later on in your Blender career, as you initially on default, if you press tab, it just goes between edit mode and object mode, but later on you want to switch into all of the modes, such as sculpt, draw mode, and weight paint mode, all the modes around. And the last setting that you want to turn on is orbit around selection, which is important to have. And these two, if they're not, these just help with your zooming, and also helps with your navigation around the Blender scene. Those are the most important ones that we need to enable so far. Other tutorials that I might record will show you other add-ons that we might need to use, and other settings that we might need to turn on just to ensure that it's functioning well. And if not, and I forget, this is where you will find any settings that if in a video that you don't see, you just enable it in one of these menus. Just go and look around. But regardless, let's go around to setting up our scene. So in the initial scene that I showed, we have three cubes and a bouncy ball, a 2D bouncy ball that goes around with the camera and does some dynamic things. So the first thing we want to do is be able to move this cube and also rotate it. The hotkeys to do that is G. G allows you to move it, and if you are a Maya user and you're not very used to this kind of G setup, you can also go under here to move, rotate, and scale. But the gizmo in Blender is not as efficient as in Maya. However, the hotkeys to help you do that within Blender, but you have to get used to it, is if you press G and Z, X and Y, or X, Y, and Z, this will allow you to lock yourself into position. So that's really important to know. This works for every function, such as R allows you to rotate, and if you hold X, it rotates around the X axis, for example, and GZ will allow you to move up and down as well. So those are your main things, and S, of course, is the scale. So I want to move this so that move it up so that it's on the 0 plane. This will start off my action, and then afterwards I want my ball to start there, but I need to have other planes. So you could in theory just press Shift A and add a new cube, or I'll just show you a no hotkey, which is Shift D, which will allow me to duplicate. And because this is a little bit of a tricky movement to get accurate with G, Y, and Z, I would like to turn on the gizmo so I can get the most accurate kind of spacing between these guys and navigate around accordingly. So I want mine to have like a free step, so it jumps up from here, and another one to jump roughly over here. Once take some time to maneuver around that, as we will be animating our ball jumping across these platforms, and you'll be looking at it for a while, so make sure you're happy with how that looks basically. Once you're done with that, we want to set up our camera. So what we want to do to set up the camera is add a new camera. So Shift A camera, and that will be our camera. To set up camera, it's a little bit weird on Blender. However, what we can do here is click on the tilde button, which is the button next to number 1. Is like that wiggly line, and we have to view it from camera. So we want to view the camera, and now if we move out of it, the camera is not moving, which is not what we want. So what we want to do here is press N, and we want to go to the secret menu on view over here, and we want to lock camera to view. And now if I move around with the camera, I am essentially the camera, and this is the easiest way to move the camera. However, we want to also have our 3D viewport view. So how we want to split the screen up is hover over the top left or any of the corners of each screen and kind of just drag it across halfway. And we want to, for this view, I'm just going to uncheck the camera to view, and I'm just going to move around, and that will just break off that connection. And the other way to move the camera is to do it by hand over here, and that corresponds over here as well. So we want to have one scene where our camera is locked into place and we are the camera, and one place where we can actually see what we're kind of doing on the right. If you ever want to zoom in with the camera and you don't want to move it, for example, you just want to go and see it a bit closer, but you want to set your camera in, you can, for example, uncheck this for a little second, zoom in a little bit, and check it back on, just so you can see the screen just a little bit better. Once we're done that, we have to set up the movement of the camera to go all the way around. So how I would start that would to go into the first position that I like. I want to probably start over here. And to insert a keyframe, I'm going to scroll this up a little bit so I can see it a bit better. The first way to start one keyframe is to press I on the make sure you're hovering over the camera, press I, and this should insert keyframes. You can tell that they've inserted a keyframe because you have the default kind of diamond shape over here, and all of your values go yellow. And then you can move along in the timeline, for example, and move it to the next position. I'm going to have my shot be like 50 seconds long, so there's 50 frames long in fact, and I'm just going to move this camera over to the last stop because I like to do my things in keyframes. So now we also need to press I to get the keyframes. To not always have to press I to insert a keyframe, you can also press this button, auto keying. You have to be a little bit more careful once you have this setting on. But for example, if I were to if I go to 25 seconds to add a keyframe, I can move this down a little bit and zoom it out so that is right here. This will automatically get me a keyframe, so now it looks like this. So it nicely zooms in to place, swirls around the space that I wanted to go to, essentially. And because of the ball wanting, I want the ball to bounce up, and I want it to track it a little bit. I'm just going to predict where the highest point of each ball movement is going to be. So, for example, I can just scroll along, imagining the ball in my mind. And I would say maybe, of course, you can always change this as as we animate the ball later on. But I would say like on frame 16, I want the ball to go up. You can have it and drop back down, so it has that nice swing. And then lastly, I want this one around this place to maybe zoom to go upwards a little bit, so we have a nice kind of bounce to it like that as we're tracking the camera on the ball. That might look cool. And you want to just adjust this to how you want it. So maybe I want to zoom up into here. So I want to be like doosh, doosh, and then bounce back across. I think that'll be pretty cool. Take your time moving the camera and keyframing, but that is the next step. We can move on to the next step after you've done that. Once you're happy with your positioning of your camera, which I am right now, you want to add a grease pencil stroke. This is a important step in using grease pencil because we want to essentially be able, because we are working in 3D space, we want to have a reference to where this is in the 3D space as well. Because typically in older productions, they would essentially render out this kind of 3D camera movement and then draw on top of it, which essentially means it translated into 3D terms would be this object will always be stuck onto the camera view. However, if we were to just do a little bit more, you put a little bit more effort in and actually translate and keyframe each of the key poses, this can be easily be able to be translated later, later on if you were to change your camera angles, for example, to so we can just easily change our camera angles wherever if we just set this up a little bit beforehand. Of course, we can just draw straight onto this just squiggle, just change the squiggle into our ball straight away, but it is essentially a little bit better and a little bit more it's just essentially a bit more efficient to be able to translate all of these into keyframes beforehand. So in the first one, we want to stay over here, and at around frame 15, we want this guy to translate to up to the second box, somewhere around here. We can just do this roughly. As you can see, it moves along with it. It doesn't have to be the best, as we'll be drawing over it as well. And then at frame 50, we want it to end up into the third box over here, like so. And now if I were to change this around a little bit, as I'll add a few more keyframes, for example, just to allow it to, actually I think this needs to be, I think that frame needs to be over here, to be honest with you. Should be on the box over here, essentially. So now if I were to ever change the camera angle, this would allow me to have the 2D view, the 2D image still kind of be roughly in the correct places for the camera movement to be in. And I'm just going to change this to be up here a little bit. So I'll move this that way a little bit, like so, something like that. And then this is where it goes upwards. I think this one I need to push this across over here and move it over here because it's not quite, yeah, so it's something similar to that. So now we have the general position of where each where the rough positioning will be for the ball, and now we can start editing the grease pencil stroke to be that ball. After that, we want to go in, if you turned on the pie menu setting, we want to go into draw mode. So I want to just go through how this is essentially grease pencil. the 2D version. You please note on how grease pencil works. It essentially draws on the space where your camera is viewing. So currently this view has the camera set up so that it's over here. However, if I were to draw over here, for example, the camera is not set, is set at that previous spot. So just take note on that. It's important to draw on this view only, and if you're struggling to get the right strokes because of that, then just zoom in. You have to make sure to stay in this camera, but also as a sense, just keep it locked essentially, just so that you don't accidentally move it, and try to get the right angle. Otherwise you will move your whole animation essentially. But essentially the controls, if you hold control, this will delete the stroke. Very, very important, because we want to have a ball. And then this default will give you 2 little layers. If we go on to this little data symbol, it gives you a lines layer and a colors layer. So obviously lines is, you know, your outline, and we have materials here that it's set up for here. We probably need to make new materials so that we can have a solid color, but we can start with the outlines first. So for example, what I want to start off with at frame 0, actually I want to start on in frame 2, essentially, because this will be a big circle. This is like the bouncy ball exercise, where it should stretch out. So, or actually maybe let me just do it the opposite way around. So we want to have it solid, and then on frame 2 we want it to, make sure you have this checked on so it starts making the frames by itself. And I'm just going to do this without onion frame, but I'll show you where the onion frame is. If you scroll along here, we get this squiggly line, and we can enable onion skin, and as you can see, that's our first set of animation. And then I'm going to just keyframe over here, which should be where the biggest ball should where our ball should be the biggest, again at the top of the curve, and then back again. We're going to squash it over here, and the next frame across we're going to make it bigger again. We can also change these whenever. I think I'll make it bigger over here, and then over here. We'll have the biggest ball again, but I'm going to just change the positioning of it as it's closer to the camera. So maybe like so. And then we're going to squish it. I'm going to have this as a full image, but a little bit smaller, and I'm going to squish it the frame before. And now we have our rough keys. We want, during this movement, we want it to have it to be elongated like so. I think we want this a little bit earlier actually, so I'm just going to drag this across, something like this. I want this to be a little bit take a little bit longer, and then I'll stretch this out again over here. And here needs to have a, here probably needs, because it's going here, it needs to drop down again, so elongate it. Same for this part as well, where we probably need to have a big tip, but bigger to the left, and we're gonna zoom in some kind of shape like that. Don't like that shape actually. Let me try again. So big over here. I'm doing this on a mouse. It's a little bit easier if we do it on keyboard. Don't like that shape. Let me try it again. Maybe like this. But yeah, mess around with it until you get the keystrokes, the keyframes in the right position. And using regular conventions. So I'm going to take a little bit of time to do this off camera and get my movement just right, and then I'll move on to how to fill in the shape essentially. So a few tips that can help you essentially to jiggle this guy around is actually go to sculpt mode, where we can use the grab brush and kind of help us push the shape, push the wire, push our outline to be specifically a little bit better. Or maybe I'm not on the grab brush at all. That's on the smooth. We want to have the grab brush here to be able to push it along. If we don't see it like this is on 4.3. That you should be defaulted onto grab brush, or you'll see it over here. But as you can see, what I'm trying to do is kind of push my image in a way so that it kind of makes sense a little bit. So just making it, stretching it out and stuff. So that's one way to kind of make it more organic, your shapes. And I'm just kind of pushing it in and just editing how it should formulate. I think it should be a little bit bigger, like so. Just stretching and squashing them how I see fit. I think it should go this way. Stuff like that goes a long way to making the animation feels really convincing. Yep, take your time with this, and we'll go on to the next step as soon as you're okay. Once you're happy with the animation, your outline animation, we're gonna do just a little quick job of filling the shape up, basically, with just a normal fill color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to where it says color. I'm going to switch over to this, and I think I'll probably typically all you have to do, for example, is to just change this color, turn off the stroke, and make it a fill color, and just change the color so that it's blue, and hopefully just this works. And I'm gonna just change this to a fill and a color to blue. Hopefully it works. If not, might need to sort it out in a second. But all I have to do is click, and I can scroll up and down to fill the edges and click again. Did that do it, or did that not do it? Let me see. I can't really tell. I don't think it did. So I'll just quickly make a new material, and I will just do the same thing again. I'm going to turn on the fill only, and this should work like so. However, it is a little bit too big, so I will just edit the color a little bit Maybe it's filling a little bit too much as it's recording. Just recording it a bit too far, closing up the gaps a little bit too much. That is a little bit too much, but I think it should be fine the more we do it. So let's try that. Oh, that's actually seemingly very thick. Let me see what's kind of gone on. 4.3 has done a lot of weird things that have changed this tutorial a little bit, but let me just figure it out quick. So there's a new setting over here which says dilate and contract. What you have to do essentially is turn it up and down to make sure that it sticks to the color. To get these little green bars, you scroll up and down. This just indicates where it's gonna try to help you close out the gap, essentially. But if you stick it at 1, the dilate should be at the perfect ratio. If not, just play around with it, and that should do the trick. This probably needs to be a little bit bigger gap, but that should help you out like so. Let me say like that, and just go around filling up the shape, which should be pretty simple. You click once, make sure might need to close this gap a little bit more than I should, or just change the dilation up. Like so. Just need to roughly do it. Of course, you can spend a little bit more time to do it a bit better. This one probably needs to be dilated up a little bit. And the last one. And there we have it. That's the whole thing colored in. And let's take a look at it. Sweet. And that is how you would, that's the basics of using Blender, navigating around, learning some few hotkeys to move and adjust, some camera movement, and how to use, how to set up your own grease pencil setup on a 3D environment. Of course, you can do this on just pure 3D or pure 2D. And so yeah, just enjoy this little process, and we'll go over some more grease pencil stuff later on. Hope you guys enjoyed that, and I'll see you guys next time.